source from which all things come. Security blanket for the stars. Understand what black is. It's not a color, it's the basis of all colors. It is not a complexion, it is a reflection of all complexions called human. And out of this blackness, passion flows like a river. Feelings tell the truth. Song and dance and making you laugh are family members. Understand what black.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Harry, thank you for that intro. Again, this is WNHH, and Harry is our station manager, and we're going to kind of chat with Sam Stevenson. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm fine. How's everyone out there?
And Cornell Wright for about 45 minutes. And we were kind of talking, Sam, with Cornell before you came on air, that, we're going to talk about organizational development and tactics and strategies and creativity and tactics. And given both of both of the experience that you both have in terms of the business world, the family world, the fraternal world, the banking world from a consulting standpoint, from an auditing standpoint, from a trustee standpoint. And Sam, I noticed on your LinkedIn page that you were retired, so we're going to share with people that that's not the case at all. You it might have been the case at one time, but you're very much involved with things now. And Cornell and I just celebrated I won't say which birthday he celebrated, but he's over 65, so he could retire if he so chose. But this is kind of not an OG show, but a show with the business and world experience. And you guys, this is not your first rodeo in terms of what does it mean to kind of survive this present situation, and more importantly, thrive not only now but through the future. How do we emerge from this kind of pandemic to really be whole from a societal perspective in terms of your family, your church, or your fraternity, your business? So, gentlemen, let's just jump right in. Cornell, we talked a little bit about the two general terms or themes might be the strength of organizations here in America as well as the world at the moment, and then how do we emerge? But let's just kick off, Sam and Cornell, with terms. How do you perceive the strengths and I would say weaknesses of organizations? And that's when I say organizations, that's a for-profit and non-profit kind of term currently.
Well, I would say, if I may jump in, and thank you very much for the opportunity, Tom, to be with you today. And Sam, good to meet you. I'm sure we'll have a good conversation, maybe continue this another time as well. Well, maybe we can get together, who knows, and maybe share something.
That's right.
But as I see it, this is an amazing point in time in which we're being shown the strengths and weaknesses of all sorts of institutions and organizations that we are associated with. You think about a number of years ago, it wasn't very long, if you were going to start a new restaurant now, you'd make sure that part of your business, with a high percentage of it, was to be takeout business, because those are the ones who are still somewhat able to survive. If you only had a restaurant sit-down business and it was a minimal percentage of your business was takeout, you're in trouble, and perhaps the doors have been closed. That's just one small example that we can all see. The larger question is, you even start looking at the whole question, they talk about global supply chains in regards to the ability for all the connectivity that we've done over time, just-in-time inventory and all these beautiful concepts. But when one link of that chain used to be called a single point of failure, if one link in that chain becomes exposed, either because of illness or quarantine or timing or tariffs or any number of reasons, that are out there, you have a breakup in your supply chain, and all of a sudden there's shortages, and you can't necessarily respond as quickly as we might think we can. So it's just a couple of quick things off the top of my head, but we can carry more on a little bit later.
Great.
Cornell,
Sam?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And I think it's in many places it's still called a single point of failure, because once you break the supply chain, it's like starting all over again. If you haven't been strategic in terms of preparing support for that supply chain, you're starting at the beginning. You're looking for someone who can bring the goods and services to you that have been broken in that supply chain. And that can be devastating to a business. And in particular, I'd like to make a couple of comments about small business, particularly the types of businesses that we find in most African American communities,
Mm.
and the impact that this particular timing is going to have on those businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do not have the proper support systems behind them, the impact is going to be devastating.
Mm.
It's going to drag them under. And having the proper support system behind you includes having sufficient infrastructure within your business to let you know where you are at any point in time. So as we move forward in this conversation, I'd like us to kind of come back to that every now and then. You guys can talk about the broader economy. As you know, in my role, a lot of what I do is geared towards small and minority businesses. And I think that's kind of more of a sweet spot for me.
Well, Sam, let's. I think Cornell will be willing to kind of stay on this point for a while, primarily because Sam, you've been involved with the African American Black Chamber of Commerce in Pittsburgh for a few decades.
Decades.
And Cornell's been involved with a counterpart here in New Haven, the Greater New Haven Business Professional Association, for a few decades. So I didn't want to necessarily raise that, but we can certainly. You're right, that's going to appeal to that's a topic that. So let's elaborate a little bit, because literally, Sam, what you've been doing in Pittsburgh, I don't know it in detail, but Cornell has been involved similarly here in New Haven with Black businesses. For better, I might say, Cornell, for better and for worse.
Well, if I may pick up some of the baton that Sam passed, yes, that is a consideration. The infrastructure, I think infrastructure is one. I think customers is another. Your infrastructure is also, I would contend, part of your financial structure as to how you're doing things. What your relationships are with bankers, etc. I'm on another board, which are a number of bankers on it, and they're talking about how hard they're working now, trying to roll out funds to the from the coronavirus, emergency funds. How hard they are trying to roll out money to customers. And then I was listening to another radio program, and it said, oh, well, a lot of those bankers are working with those customers that they have an existing relationship first. Those customers they have, those larger customers who are perhaps in more need, i.e. those who are, quote unquote, the better customers for the banks, are getting the money first. And the smaller organizations perhaps aren't necessarily in the same position, aren't getting the same attention, aren't being responded to as quickly. And so to your point, the whole question of infrastructure, I think, is certainly in that area. And then we can talk about other areas for supply and inventory and all those kind of things as well.
I think that when we talk about infrastructure for small business, we're not just talking about their ability to generate product and their ability to generate whatever financial information they need, but we're also talking about their relationships. And with small business in particular, when I was in practice, and I'm a retired CPA, so when I was in practice, I generally encourage my clients, if they were of enough size, and I don't mean large, I mean if they were small businesses, but if they had sufficient size to have dual banking relationships, one with a major bank and one with a community-sized bank. What we saw happen with the first set of funding out of the CARES Act is that those companies went to large banks, as Cornell was alluding to. And what happened when they got there is they found out that those banks very often either were not prepared to move forward. Various banking regulations kind of impact that and their fears of regulators, or they were able to move forward, but they had moved forward with their current customers, typically their larger customers, typically their best customers. typically their least risky customers in terms of moving forward, because at that point, the large banks did not really understand how or whether they would be held accountable for how those loans got serviced, and whether or not they would be held accountable for whether or not those loans that were going to be repaid would be repaid. So there was a little shakiness there. The other side of that coin was the community banks, which typically deal with smaller customers because they don't have the capital to take on the large companies that the big banks take on, were a lot more nimble and able to get to many of those businesses a lot quicker. So size matters, okay? Your size matters as well as the institution that you're dealing with. Size matters.
Let's stay on that point for a second, because Sam, Cornell and I were talking last week, maybe around Wednesday or Thursday, about a bank and a community bank in Bridgeport that is no longer in existence, and I was referencing even Freedom National Bank in Harlem, kind of an obituary on how do our community institutions, financial institutions in particular, cease from existence. You're currently you're on the audit committee for Dollar Bank in Pittsburgh.
That's correct. I chair the audit committee.
Chair the audit committee for it, and is Dollar Bank, is it considered a community bank?
Technically, yes, it's considered a community bank. It's right on the cusp of moving into that next group of banks. Certain things happen when banks hit 10 billion in assets, and their whole world changes. We're right below that right now.
And so say a little bit more, and I think Cornell will have some comments in that regard as well, because this is so important as we talk about the future and emerging in your banking relationship. If you're going to earn money at any level, be it network marketing, be it selling their products, be it you're going to have a banking relationship, just even the structure of banks moving forward, the structure of our financial system after we leave this period could change. And as you referenced, if you don't have strong relationships, you can really be left without a paddle, in a boat without a paddle. So to the extent that you could share a little bit more about the Liberty Bank and your involvement there, and how that might, how community banks can assist with smaller businesses, that would be helpful.
Well, I guess, and again, it depends on banking relationship, an individual or a company's banking relationship. Banks that are considered community banks tend to work more with, as I mentioned earlier, companies that are not the big global companies. Generally, if a community bank, for instance, has a lending relationship with a global entity, it's probably a participation where, banks like everyone else tries to leverage their risk. So, a global company will have a huge borrowing, and they'll participate. It'll be participated out by a lead bank to any number of banks, so that the risk to each bank is limited. So even with large companies that are not necessarily global companies, those kinds of participations happen. Community banks. The community banks primarily serve not just the mom and pops, but also those middle market companies finding new communities. Companies that might have 1,500 employees, 2,500 employees. They may operate regionally. They may even operate globally. Their supply chain might be a global supply chain. One of the things that we did here in the U.S. Many years ago is we stopped making anything other than money. So we're suffering as a result of that right now. I mean, a lot of the things that we need in this country to combat this virus, we don't make them anymore.
Hmm.
We sent that out to various countries across the globe so that we could make more money because we could get it produced at a lower cost by then. But the companies getting back to your question, community banks generally are in position to react relatively quickly to the needs of the small business community. And that's one of the reasons why it's so necessary to make certain that we keep that group of banks alive.
Indeed. And Cornell, care to comment?
Just agreement across the board with what Sam is talking about. And I think the other thing I would add to it is that the community bank involvement is difficult because he's mentioned every plateau, and certainly Sam can speak to this more specifically than I can, as banks continue to grow, which is not like leaps and bounds, but if you buy itsy bitsy spider, you have to continue to have capitalization. And so one of the banks here in Bridgeport had a problem with that a number of years ago, and unfortunately had to go out of business as a result of not getting enough sufficient capitalization. They were still performing, everything was working right, but just couldn't continue growing in order to meet some of the clip levels that were discussed. And so that's another factor. Just you can't grow too fast, you can't go too slow. You have to kind of get that sweet spot for the growth, and that's hard to manage. And if your community is changing, and as you're identifying, smaller businesses tend to have more exposure in regards to your risk profile. And so it's all really hard for those bankers, and we need to make sure that they have a safety net as well.
Gentlemen, let's shift back if we can to what Sam had raised, and also Cornell by implication, the need for small business, for Black minority businesses to kind of band together. And Sam referenced kind of the challenges of the past, and you're in Bridgeport with his Black Chamber, and Cornell, you certainly have blow by blow descriptions of some of the challenges here in New Haven with our Greater New Haven, with our Black Chamber, but also you're involved, Cornell, with the White Chamber as well. So, gentlemen, talk about the need for businesses now, regardless of your size, to kind of band together, network, share, look at whether you have an infrastructure that will support one another moving forward.
Well, I believe that this epidemic and our reaction to that is pointing out a number of interrelationships that people may not have given enough credit to. The interrelationship between small businesses and the larger. I've heard discussions about, from various news forecasts, news commentary, said that 60 to 70% of the population is employed by small businesses. And then based on that definition, and then also that we as the consumers participate with a very high percentage of our gross domestic product, as you would see. And then as you see, just whole connection of what's happening to the earth when we perhaps don't participate as the way we used to, things start to clean up pretty quickly. And so if anything, I think, Tom, this is showing a lot more interconnection than perhaps we had given credit for. And so therefore, I hope what will come out is a lot more appreciation from the large businesses down to the smaller business, and how we as the customers and the final consumers have such an impact on what everybody gets a chance to do or not do.
Sam?
I would say Cornell hit the nail on the head with those comments. Clearly, in terms of connectivity, one of the things that I think businesses should find by their membership in associations and chambers is they should find a support network there. For instance, a lot of what we do in the Pittsburgh region in terms of our African American Chamber is we handle things that put in front of our members attorneys, financing opportunities, seminars that teach them about business and how to do business, how to support their businesses, how to read their financial information, the importance of insurances of various types. I think one of the things that we've heard a little bit about now in this environment is companies who are suing their insurance companies because their business interruption insurance doesn't cover something like a pandemic. Well, I mean, if you've been in business for 25 years and you've been paying into business for business interruption insurance, all of a sudden a pandemic hits, you can't pay your people for weeks. You can't do business. You can't open your manufacturing plant for weeks. Your insurance company comes back to you and says, well, there's a clause in here. This is not an act of God. You don't really have business interruption insurance for this stuff. That puts you in a whole different frame of mind and really freezes your ability to make comeback from these times. So, that support network thing, having the right people who can take a look at, for instance, we do a thing once a year where we have a panel of attorneys from some of the largest firms in the Pittsburgh region available to our members for, I believe, either a 1 or a 2 hour period by phone. And they can call in and ask them any question that relates to their business and their specific situations. Those are the kinds of things that help strengthen small businesses, give them access to the same kinds of resources that major companies have, because these are those same attorneys, and it's a pro bono thing that they do with us once a year. We do something similar with people in the insurance industry, okay, so that we can expose our members to various types of insurance and what certain types of coverages mean. So being able to rely on those kinds of support systems as you're making decisions about where your business is going, it's just critical. And it's going to be even more important as we come out of the backside of the current situation that we're in. Our businesses are certainly going to have the right kinds of contacts to provide them with advice to keep them alive.
Well, if I may glam on to what Sam was offering, and certainly I agree with it all, and not to be a paid commercial message, but to pick up on that, everyone's strategic plan is going to have to change, because this has just blown everybody's plan out the water for whatever you anticipated this year's performance was going to be. But to that, so new strategic plan is going to be in order. But within that, there's also the issue that in most businesses, especially if a small business, when you think about it, people started in a small business because they had a particular technique or capability is what made them capable to start the business in the first place. I'm a carpenter. I know how to bake. I know how to cook. Whatever it is, the skills that you have. However, the skills to run and manage a business are more complex and have more dimensions than just whatever your technical skills are that allow you to be successful or have something that the market's willing to pay for. And so I think what Sam was also, I mean, to add on to what Sam was talking about, those additional rounding experiences, education, and contacts with others that are knowledgeable in order to be able to help people continue to add that to their management capabilities in order to continue to improve their business and be able to be more flexible.
Gentlemen, let's shift for a second. Again, you listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Sam Stevenson and Cornell Wright are with us, and both these gentlemen are veterans in terms of the world. They've been, this is not their first rodeo, in spite of how they might appear. I'm just, at any rate, this is not their first rodeo, but Sam and I actually met in the 70s, and Cornell, I can't remember, it must have been in the 80s that we met. By the way, Sam, Cornell pretends, he tells me that he played on the Lafayette football team, but he was a few years behind us. So I guess we might have played a lot. Bucknell played Lafayette, right? I think we
absolutely. That was a big rival for us.
Rivalry. So Cornell says he played a little bit, but I think we played freshman and that was it. I know I could have a faint memory about that.
That was it. Had to go get some grades.
That's key.
Stay in school, get some grades.
But in terms of the Sam, I was talking to Cornell a little bit before we came on air about that. Even it's just somewhat of a shift, but I think it still might be pertinent in terms of these times. Even your family, your network, your family could be your business. Your friends and family. For us to think about organization and survival, that even if you're not an LLC or if you're not a business, you're not selling a product, that your relationships might bear fruit. Your relationships might involve further organization for maximizing people's our survival, if I'm making any sense.
Yes, yes, you are. But I'm going to be real short this time. Your family, your friends, those that you have personal relationships with can be very important to you in terms of advice and also pointing out additional contacts for you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go there for advice, you need to know that they are knowledgeable because you really want to react with your head, not with your heart.
Okay. Cornell?
Well, once again, I agree, and I have taught the management as a concept at the community college level. And with every time I would teach a class, I would tell my students that not only are some of the lessons we're offering here today applicable to businesses, but also it's applicable to the business of your life. And so you take some of the same techniques, same approaches, that you use in business and apply them to your life in order to help to improve your life. Structured decision making, for example, time management. Just think about right now how important inventory control is for all of us to make sure that you have enough of the essential ingredients, right? Can't make that favorite recipe if you don't have the essential ingredient that you need for that. So certainly that's all important. And then to pick up on exactly what Sam was saying, I too feel that it's important to have contacts and relationships, but you have to be careful to make sure that your relationships and the information you're receiving is accurate and good, or at least can be verified.
Excellent. Cornell, share a little bit about it with us. Your book came out last year. A little bit more.
End of 18 last year actually launched. Yes.
And it seems to me, I know you're working on your second one, but share a little bit about, because you included lessons and things that were even predictive about the situation. If one reads your book now, I think they can gain great insight in terms of the dilemma that we're encountering.
Well, you're certainly kind in saying that. The title of the book is 31 Coffee Breaks to a Better Organization. And my intention of writing the book was to give an opportunity because, first of all, many of us don't have time to read a lot anymore. So you figure I write a business column for the New Haven Register. It's a compilation of those columns in regards to those topics I think might be appropriate and useful in organizations and can be digested in the 15, 20 minutes you might have with a cup of coffee. And so there's 31 of them in the book. You can kind of take a look at them in order to see what makes sense for your organization. If you already have either that concept or that capability in place in your organization, fine. You had a cup of coffee with a colleague, and you can keep moving on from there. But so, for example, one of the ideas I had was looking at a timeline. The timeline is a communication technique. Timeline is a historical technique. Timeline is a marketing technique. But I think as we're going to go back and look at this whole coronavirus discussion, there's going to be a discussion regarding the timeline of what happened with regard to it. And then as you look at your business and how you had a chance to respond to it, what information did you get when in order to be able to respond and make the best decisions you could, given the information you had to work with. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk about the book, but certainly hopefully be some helpful to people.
And the title again?
31 Coffee Breaks to a Better Organization.
And Sam, just before I come back to you, Cornell,
give me a second to write that down.
Oh, say it again, Cornell.
31 coffee breaks to a better organization.
Excellent. And Cornell, while Sam was writing and working on his hieroglyphics, share a little bit about some of the recent columns, some of the titles and focus of your recent columns in the Register, because with it online is convenient, but it's tough. Sometimes people don't read as much of the newspaper anymore online as they once did when they held it in their hands.
Well, I thank you for that. The column I wrote most recently was in yesterday's paper was that we're in a situation of situational analysis and situational anxiety. And so with situational analysis, I like to SWOT opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in order to provide organizations and individuals and families, going back to that, with an assessment of kind of where are we now And I would suggest that might be something worthwhile for all of us to consider as we continue moving through this and hopefully come to the end of this discussion. But situational anxiety is also real because I think we're all looking around kind of a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious as to what's our next step, depending upon your personal ability, both financially and from your inventory, and even in regards to your personal space management as to what you're dealing with and managing at this point in time. There's a lot of uncertainty that people have. And so also recognizing that's real and how we process it, I think is hopefully something people need to consider.
Absolutely. And in fact, part of what you said kind of reminds me of an article that I read last week in an AICPA document by a Columbia University professor. I think her name was Rita McGrath. And in essence, what she said is that as we come out of this situation that COVID-19 has thrown us into, companies really need to be preparing while we're still in it to look at their business strategies to determine, will that strategy continue to work when we come out the back end of this thing? Or do we need to tinker with it? Do we need to scrap it and re-strategize? And companies may find themselves in a position where the products and services that they provided prior to COVID-19 invading the US are not going to be the products and services that they provide on the other side of this thing. That they need to be thinking, has what I've been selling still going to have a market when we come out the other side? Or do I need to be preparing to do something different? I think I looked at 60 Minutes, and not to do a commercial, but I looked at 60 Minutes last night, I believe it was. And 60 Minutes had a part of their program talked about what Ford and GM are doing in terms of making PPE for healthcare providers now and for others, which is something that was so far off the market for them that they didn't know that they would be able to do it. And the guy who was responsible for this at Ford, they found this company, I think the company's name was Ventec or something like that, that made ventilators. And he took a group of their people to, I believe it was Arizona, to meet with this company. What he told his guys on the way down there was to not look at this as some little small company that we know more about it than they do, but as someone that could help you to save one of your family members by doing what it is that they do. And I think the fact that they've been able to they were able to ramp that up in 3 weeks' time, so that they've put themselves on a trajectory to produce 30,000 of these things in like 6 weeks or something like that, is just the kind of indicator of the kind of nimbleness that some of our small businesses are also going to have if they're going to be able to survive the other side of this COVID-19 crisis. You really are going to have to be able to take a look at what it is you do, how well you do it, and determine, are you going to be able to still be competitive in that market with the hits that you've taken while we were in this crisis.
Cornell?
Well, because, and I agree, because you figure the hits are not only financial, not only are they going to be technical, not only is it going to be supply issues, not only going to be your personnel, are they still going to be able to be available to come back to you, or do they want to come back to you? Okay, and I think that goes across the spectrum. And to be included, just to give a shout out to those folks who are in the medical community and the first responders who are being battered with mentally, emotionally, and physically regarding this, and some of the older ones perhaps even considering retiring after this whole thing is done. And so you lose those skill sets. But I think it's an amazing story of technology. I think it's also a question that there needs to be a new focus, if you will, on our technological capabilities as a nation. Similar to like the since we all can remember when John Kennedy offered the challenge to get to the moon. I mean, it's that same type of capabilities. They sent engineers and tech and scientists down to talk to that other company. They didn't send me. Okay, they sent down people who would understand the technology in order to be able to come back. And I've heard an interview with that fellow, other than the 60 Minutes, and he was talking about how they not only had the technology people working on devices, they had other people working on changing their manufacturing processes in order to be able to have the machines, in order to be able to start to make that a full manufacturing capabilities. So it was pretty much a full court press, and can shown when you put on a full court press and you have capabilities, there's a lot of things that can happen.
Gentlemen, I want to shift for a second to the personal, because I had a chance to chat with both of you last week, and this show is kind of therapeutic for me. I don't mind using that word, but the need for mental discipline and my personal challenge to stay optimistic. But you gentlemen kind of reinforced some faith claims to me. But I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling somewhat challenged from a mental and psychic standpoint today. I just wondered if you could share a few things about what you guys have been doing from a mental discipline and exercise, just what's kind of helped to stoke your optimism versus your pessimism in terms of fighting fear and enabling faith.
Well, I think I understand your question, and you can hit me up if I'm not responding appropriately. But for me, it's been the ability to check with what I call my people in various places across the country to see how they're doing, and to tell them how I'm doing, and to find out that by and large, almost everyone I check with is doing well. And what that says to me is that having faith has enabled many people to deal with the pressures that this pandemic has put on us as individuals, and having relationships that are close relationships that you can bounce your troubles as well as your joys off of, enable me to move on. Don't know whether that gets to the question that you were asking, but that's kind of how I put it. I am, Tom, you've known me for 50 years. Okay, I don't want to give your age away, but you've known me for 50 years. And I've never been a big churchgoer, but I've always had a lot of faith. And I've turned to that more than ever, probably over the last couple of years, even before this pandemic, just to deal with some issues that were kind of weighing heavy on my heart. So I'm going to say that that's kind of what's pulling me through.
I appreciate that. Cornell?
I have also I guess a 5-card hand, if you will, of things I'm trying to do. Certainly it's reaching out and touching with friends and family, and I would like to think it's therapeutic for both sides, and also to that as I have the opportunity, which is the second, to sort through the information, and I have a number of friends who are pretty knowledgeable in this area. I then pass on what is applicable and worthwhile to my network and friends and family, to try to help them kind of, as I get something I think is worthwhile and good, kind of pass that on. Fortunately, it's springtime. So the good news, bad news, I have a yard that needs some attention, and I have a wife who wants to make sure I give it some. so I'm getting a chance to get out and get more exercise than I might normally do. I have been listening to music a lot.
Hmm.
And those songs that are inspirational and those songs that are pretty much um, instructional. And so if I may just give a shout out to Marvin Gaye's Make Me Wanna Holla. Sometimes I just throw up both my hands, okay? Just because I just don't understand how some things have happened. But then also there's Bob Marley with One Love and John Lennon with Imagine. So my spirituality is strong within this and dealing with this whole situation and believing that, yes, there will be a better day for us if we continue to pay attention, make it through, and take the lessons we learned from this experience and move them forward with us.
Thank you. What would you say to some of the young people? I did a show last week with my grandson and two or three of his friends, and he's TJ. He's recently graduated from Porter Chester Sam, it's one of the technical schools here after high school. So he HVAC kind of skills he has, et cetera. And then I was reading something about even air conditioning systems viruses can kind of, air conditioning systems can kind of expand the viruses, the particles, the droplets. So it seems to me that if HVAC systems, air conditioning systems, they may have to have special kind of filters or things. So I want him to be on the show so you guys could kind of encourage him that his kind of traditional skill set in terms of HVAC and electrical thing, that might even be more needed in terms of from a public health standpoint, from an environmental health standpoint, from an architectural standpoint than ever before. But what would you say to young people? What would you say to the class of 2020? If I'm a high school graduate or a college graduate or PhD graduate, this is what the world looks like. So what's kind of your shout out to the class of 2020?
I guess I would probably tell them that as individuals, if you have made up your mind and you have a course of action that you wanted to take before this COVID-19 pandemic hit, ask knowledgeable people to see how it impacts that course of action. And if in fact it is not going to negatively impact that course of action over the long term, then go for it. If it is going to impact it over the long term, then reconsider what it is that you were thinking about doing. There are a lot of opportunities today to do any number of things, to engage yourself in any number of ways. And don't be too dedicated to one particular thing, because they have a lifetime of changes that they're going to encounter. And that they should embrace those changes.
Cornell?
I would glam on to that, if I may, once again, Sam, and say that with that information, I would take two parts to that. One is that for your grandson and his group to think about what they're learning now as being a technical skill, which then can lead them to their own business at some point in time in the future. After they make sure that they're solid within their technical capabilities, then have that capability of moving into their own. But then the way in which that happens, and one of the things we've seen now that's been almost a renaissance, if you will, or explosion, and that is with online education. You know, that the capability for any of those changes that Sam was talking about, you can, at this point in time, prepare yourself for those changes through any number of online educational capabilities. And, you know, from colleges and universities, major colleges and universities to, you know, to my YouTube channel or Tom's YouTube channel in regards to providing you with education. And so certainly there's no reason for people not to be able to get a lot of information now that's hopefully good and substantive. And then, as Sam also mentioned, then bring that back to your trusted sources just to make sure that what you're hearing is right and good for you.
We have about 2 minutes or so, so I want to give you guys a chance for last words, and Harry will play the music, and that'll be our kind of cue that we have to end this particular segment. But we will be back. Isn't that correct, gentlemen?
Sure,
You
Tom.
say so, boss.
There, I say so. I say so. I proclaim it. I proclaim it. At your convenience, but it's so important given the wisdom that you gentlemen have, and we can have other people on the show just to kind of talk about where do we wind up in terms of this stage of civilization, and hopefully a hopeful future. One of the shows I want to do definitely in terms of the international implications you guys have mentioned about supply chains, and even if we solve the problem health-wise, public health-wise in the States, the rest of the world, particularly South America and Asia, is still kind of suffering like crazy about it, and so who knows when we might be able to kind of come out from this. I was noting, Sam, that the University of Pittsburgh has been undergoing some vaccine trials in terms of the medical school, and certainly here at Yale, at the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. So let's hope that we'll have a vaccine. But my contention is that even after, same way polio, mumps, chickenpox, et cetera, this is not the last virus that we'll have to kind of encounter. So it's going to be a really fascinating world as we move forward. But kind of any last words? Cornell, I'll start with you, and then Sam, if you could lead us out. Cornell?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, Tom and Sam. Good meeting you. Hope to see you again in person sometime. Just the whole thing, the virus is going to continue because it's the planet that we live, and we all have one world to live on. And so on a more personal level, I'm launching SWOT USA, SWOTUSA.US, in order to help us all figure out what a best SWOT analysis for the United States would be going forward. That'll be coming out early in May.
What is that again? Say
SWOTUSA.US.
And Sam, just before I come to you, Cornell, this falls under the category of your predictive index certified planner.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat, and I didn't want to mention that word because it's too highfalutin, but I was really intrigued. So
That's another time for us.
Okay, but you have been involved with your career about surveys and prediction and feedback from the customer marketplace.
Yes.
And that's going to be even more fundamental than anything else moving forward.
Thank you.
Sam?
If I have to say what my last word would be, it would be, don't allow these current times to put you in a place of discouragement. Mankind has faced many situations over many centuries. We've always found a way to overcome them. Ultimately, we will find a way to deal with this particular situation as well. But we have to keep our mental health strong.
Yes.
So that we're prepared to continue to deal with it. I'm looking forward to getting out of the backside of this thing, and getting back to something that will resemble what used to be normal. I don't think what's going to be normal in the future might be quite the same as what was normal before we got there. But I'm looking forward to it, and I think that we need to adopt that type of attitude so that we're in the right frame of mind when the time comes.
And Kaisha Velasquez was going to join us, but something came up, and she has a number of clients, and that was the reason I wanted her on the show to kind of share about the mental discipline and the exercise, and we can each do to kind of maintain our mental health. Certainly, the psychiatric institutes, the domestic abuse, there are people kind of freaking out in so many ways, and we certainly want the planet to be healthy and whole. Gentlemen, thank you so much for kind of being. Sam, I know you mentioned 50. I think you're going to put us on blast like that, but that's okay. That's all right.
Be grateful. I have too many friends who are not still here. So
no, you're right. Grateful. You're right. We have to talk to one another. But Cornell, thank you so much. Sam Stevenson, thank you so much. Harry, thank you, man, for kind of manning the ship in terms of at the station and remotely being the station manager. Really appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next week.
Well, great to meet you. Everybody
understand what black is. It's not a color, it's the basis of all colors. It is not a complexion, it is a reflection of all complexions called human. And out of this blackness, passion flows like a river. Feelings tell the truth, song and dance and making you laugh are family members. Understand what black is. The breath you breathe, the sweat on your brow, the cheers and the tears balancing the world on your head. Faith is the glue that holds us all together. This is your blackness, not some horror story of lost souls drifting into the land of perversion. Black is love, is a light shining on a path leading to the sun, or caressed in the bosom of the moon. Understand what black is, power you must yield to, a force so strong we try to sleep it away. They say you must be electric and plugged in to the sockets of the world. Black is humanity. Understand what black is. Understand black.